Hello, Eternal Life fans. So, I asked you guys who you wanted me to judge. And the verdict is in. This guy, Stefan Molyneux, because supposedly he was not supporting life extension. So I looked into it. I found the video you guys were talking about. Here is my comments.
Hello.
Hello. How are you doing?
Hey, Steph. How's it going?
Fine. How are you doing?
Good. I have sort of a little mental exercise that I've been struggling with and was hoping to get your input. You're an atheist, hard atheist, I believe. And from that perspective, would you agree that our existence itself and the fact that we're going to die someday is the number one problem we face as humans, period? Obstacle in life, a problem that we must solve as a society.
I don't know. That's a good question.
Yeah, it's a very, very good question. This caller is on the right track. Absolutely, death is the worst problem that humanity faces. Okay? If we die, then our life was pointless. When you think about it. When you really think about it, that's the truth. But let's see what Stefan thinks.
Yeah, I don't know. That's an interesting question. I myself, obviously I'd like to keep living, but I'm probably a little bit more at peace with the concept of death than perhaps some people are.
Okay. At peace with death. Why would you be remotely at peace with death? Why? He's losing points. He's losing lots of points.
Because, of course, if we didn't die, we wouldn't need children. There would not be that same renewal in the thought processes, that same challenging of existing stereotypes and ways of thinking. So that sort of renewal at the biological and intellectual level, I think, is pretty important for the progress of society.
Uh-oh. It sounds like he's trying to somehow justify death because he's rationalizing that death creates this renewal process, like old people die, making way for new generations. If every generation dies to make way for a new generation, then the whole process becomes meaningless because nothing truly lasts. If every consciousness that is born eventually dies, then everything is pointless. Because everything that you work up for as an individual, we have all these things that we aspire for, and we have accomplishments and dreams and goals. But if you eventually die, everything becomes meaningless. Okay?
So, it just seemed like a big, meaningless thing.
As far as this whole renewal process, ridiculous crap that they're talking about, look, there can be a renewal process without death. It's called, technology. We can have future technology that can help our brains restructure new neural pathways in our brains. Make our brains more like childlike, and there could be a relearning process and all this stuff. The technology is going to change everything. We don't have to rely on this old system of death and rebirth. This circle of death. It's not the circle of life, it's the circle of death.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I never actually thought of that, sort of renewal process as being essential.
Well, you've probably heard this old thing that says that the adherents of an old scientific theory, they never change their minds, they just die off, and they're replaced by people. And for people who've had long-term prejudices, in a sense, if a lot of them don't change their minds, they just have to get the green shoots coming up that push out the old trees. And, the mammals of new thought displace the dinosaurs that won't change. And so my concern would be that the progress of human thoughts is pretty damn slow as it is. If you look at philosophy 2,500 years ago and now, 2,500 years ago, to still come up with, I think, outside of UP, a coherent definition of ethics is pretty damn slow progress. If we took out the renewal of new thinkers, oh man, I don't know what would happen. It would seem like even slower. Anyway.
You see what he's doing here? He's doing exactly what I suspected he was doing. He is justifying death because death gets rid of bad people with stupid old ideologies, indoctrinated people, who are stubborn in their ways and they're not, good thinkers. Well, you know what? Death also kills good, smart people. And also, just because someone is stagnant in their thoughts does not justify killing them. Just because someone has old, stubborn ways of thinking doesn't mean that they should have to die. Oh, you have a bad way of thinking. We're just gonna let you die, so new generations of kids can take your place. That's not fair. That's evil. This line of thinking is really, really idiotic. I mean, he's basically saying, think about all the amazing genius people who, he's discounting the fact that amazing, brilliant minds also die from this so-called renewal process that he's talking about. The brilliant minds die. The people who would have been curing cancer, the people who would have invented amazing technology that would have saved lives, fed the starving children, and so on. They could make this Earth a paradise on Earth. Instead, you have all these brilliant people dying from old age, so they can't finish the dreams they started. It's a wasted life. It's a huge potential of life that is destroyed. It sucks. Aging really is the enemy. I can't believe he doesn't see this.
Let's just say it's a big problem, and it would be great to have it optionally be able to be solved.
Right, exactly. Okay, so you have hypothetical society A, which, you may contest this, but let's say that there exists a form of society which would provide us indefinite life extension the quickest. And it may not be a free society. Now we have society B, which would be your ideal free society, anarcho-capitalist perfection. Which society should we advocate for if, given that our death is the greatest problem that we face as humans, and tyranny may not be a bigger problem than that needs to be addressed. Then we should address existence itself first before we address the problem that we face in society itself.
I see where this caller, I see their chain of thought, and it's very intelligent. What's more important is living forever, regardless of how the government is structured or anything like that. If there's a big government, if there's a small government, from what I understand, this Stefan Molyneux, he's into very small government. He's kind of like an anarchist. So if having an anarchy or a small government is not going to bring about the life extension, then that is definitely not the ideal government. You want to have a government, if a big government is what's going to bring about the life extension the fastest and the most effective way, that's what we want. We want whatever can make us live forever, because living forever is the first priority. The first priority isn't having a particular kind of government. So the kind of government we should have is whatever kind of government will be most likely to give us the life extension. Now, me personally, I believe that is a bigger type of government that can give us the life extension, because I don't think people are smart enough to donate their money to the life extension scientists. I think we need to tax the people. We need to have a politician in government like Zoltan Istvan, who would be smart enough to tax the people, essentially forcing them to donate to the life extension. That's because people they don't know what's in their best interest. They're not smart enough. So sometimes we need a big, powerful government to step in and actually do what's best for the people, because they don't even know what's best for themselves. Most of the people don't want to live forever. They're content with getting old and dying, so they're stupid, and therefore a small government's not really going to be the answer for this. I don't think, personally.
Yeah, I mean, the way that I would sort of look at life extension, I mean, it would be great in a way, but it would also be kind of, look, how many old people do you know?
Decent amount.
And do you find them to be, rational and curious and emotionally mature and open-minded and philosophical and willing to change their minds based on new evidence?
Right. Right. Like you said, I mean, the turnover of, new minds and new, people thinking is obviously helpful.
Yeah, because look, well,
but,
the good and bad mental habits that people have, they only harden with age, right? I mean, if you have not developed, self-knowledge, introspection, and maturity and wisdom and tolerance and courage and all the other sort of emotional virtues or character virtues, if you're sort of narrow-minded and petty and reactionary and primitive and immature and so on, I mean, if you live forever, that's only going to get worse. There's no breakthrough point. There's no King Lear storm that opens people's minds.
Sure.
If you want to be an athlete of the mind, you got to train for many years. If you sit on the couch eating Cheetos and smoking, you're not going to suddenly be able to run a marathon. So my concern would be that if this society was still statist and yet managed to live forever, I think that they would just the arteries of the mind would harden to the point where I don't think any innovation would come, or not much innovation would come out of that society, and I think that it would kind of rot.
There he goes again on this same line of thinking. Oh, we should just have the old people die because, those old people are going to have stubborn, bad, non-progressive thoughts. And that they need to die, make room for new thinkers who are more progressive. This is bullcrap. It's obviously bullcrap. It's very evil because the punishment doesn't match the crime. He's basically acting like these old people who are stubborn in their thinking, their punishment should be death. Hello? That's wrong. All right? Everyone has a right to live. So he's trying to negate that right to life just because he's determining that they should die to make room for better thinkers who are more progressive, younger people. It's so stupid. Come on. You see, he's not anticipating the changes that are going to happen in the future. If everyone's living forever and we've cured aging, the society is going to be drastically different. The technology is going to be extremely advanced. We're going to have different ways of progressing our minds and our thoughts. We're going to have the help of artificial intelligence. We're going to have the help of mind interfaces with computer chips that go in our brain and help our thinking and can help us think in new ways. Neuroplasticity. Okay? So he's not really thinking about how the future's really going to be different. He's thinking it's going to be the same. He's just not thinking at all, really.
Think for 1 fucking second!
Yeah, I can see that. I'm just thinking from a standpoint of that the state of existence is always preferable to the state of non-existence, and even if that society may not be, they may have the issues of the hardening of the arteries of the mind, as you say. It would still be preferable on an individual basis than to a society where everyone dies off and. I was just thinking, on a hypothetical thing.
This caller is absolutely right. See, the caller's looking at things with the perspective from the individual. The individual perspective. We're all individuals. And now Stefan Molyneux trying to look at things through the society, saying that death is better for the society. He's not understanding that the society is individuals. There's really no difference. what's good for the individual is good for the society, because the society is made up of individuals. And, from your perspective, from my perspective, we should realize that we do want to live forever. And that's more important anyways than the society as a whole, because we should have our own self-interest at heart. The first and foremost, we should be invested in our own self-interest and our own self-preservation, okay? So Stefan Molyneux is acting like people should just be willing to sacrifice their own life for some supposed benefit of the whole society, because it's going to create a renewal of the thinking. What is this crap? That's really what it is. It's crap. Why is this guy even popular?
But we're talking about two different things here, right? So we're talking about that which is good for an individual and that which is good for society, right? So let's take an example. So if you are an individual antelope on the African plains, would you prefer to be eaten by a lion or not?
Not eaten by a lion.
Not to be eaten by a lion, exactly right. And yet, what happens if lions eat no antelope?
Lions cannot exist.
Yeah, and so the antelope, that's no negative. But what happens to the antelopes if none of them get eaten?
Well, they're more prevalent.
And then what happens?
We have a lot of antelope.
Right, I understand. You can say they're more prevalent in a third way if you want. But what happens to their food supply?
I see where he's going with this little analogy. It's completely evil. He's justifying death, acting like, the individuals should be okay with sacrificing themselves for the benefit of the society. It's really, really evil. It's completely evil. Shame on Stefan Molyneux. Stefan Molyneux, whatever.
Wait, so the lions eat the antelope?
No, the lions, let's say that all the antelopes get their individual wish to not be eaten by lions.
Okay.
What happens to the antelopes and their food supply? Right, because the antelopes eat the grass, right?
Okay, yeah.
So what happens if none of the antelopes
right. It diminishes. Yes, it diminishes.
Well, yeah, they strip off their food supply, and then they all starve to death, right?
True. That's true. Yeah, we had an overpopulation issue. Would definitely be in a big hurdle.
Of course, I should have guessed. He's gonna say overpopulation. That's what he's getting at here with this little stupid antelope analogy. Look, the whole overpopulation thing has been debunked 1,000 times. And it's a colonization of other planets. Ever heard of this? We're gonna have more room. The future's gonna be different. We're gonna have other technologies that are green technologies that allow the population of the planet, to allow the Earth to sustain a greater population. And already, even as things stand now, the Earth could probably handle like another 10 billion people just fine. I drove across the country. I saw how much open land there is. It's ridiculous how much open land there is. I think most of this overpopulation crap is just a myth. It's just perpetuating a stupid myth. Oh, and you know what? Even if overpopulation was a concern, even if we were going to live in an overpopulated world, if we cured aging, well, you know what? That's better than being dead. Okay? I'm not going to sacrifice my life just so that the world can be less populated. I'd rather live in an extremely overpopulated world. I'd rather live in a world with 50 billion people or 100 billion people or even 500 billion people. I'd rather have almost no room to live but still get to live. The most important thing is just to be able to stay alive, because this is the only life we have. Okay, so this guy is really not smart.
In a big hurdle, but that's still on the level of thinking of what's best for society as a whole versus what's best for the individual. Of course.
Well, no, but what I'm saying
because-
is that when we're talking about a community as a whole, we're talking about something that is quite different, right? So look, every human being would want to win the lottery. I mean, pretty much. I mean, there's a few Zen annoying idiots who wouldn't, right? But
Right.
most people, if you hand them a winning lottery ticket, they're not going to play taps and hang their heads in horror, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so everybody wants to win the lottery, but what happens if everybody wins the lottery?
Well, the value of money depreciates.
Yeah,
The
I mean, there's no
supply,
money.
so-
There's no It all becomes toilet paper.
There's no money there. Yeah.
Yeah, so society collapses, everybody starves to death, and we end up eating our toenails, and I don't know, we're back to hunting antelope. I don't know, but
Ugh. Look, he's trying to paint a picture where if we were to cure aging, oh, society would be so horrible. Like, all these people would die, and there'd be overpopulation, be killing, people be running out of food. It's just a negative, pessimistic attitude. Like, come on, can't society figure out solutions for these problems? What's the bigger problem? The fact that 100,000 people are dying every day, or some hypothetical problem you're going to invent, pretend like you know what's going to happen in the future, and therefore you're arguing that aging is okay because it's creating a cycle of renewal. This is crap. It's such freaking obvious crap. Ugh.
but so if everyone gets their individual wish, yeah, everybody wants something for nothing, right? Everybody wants to be paid $1 million a minute, right? But if everybody gets paid $1 million a minute, society collapses, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I see that. Yeah, so
I'm sorry,
saying
I'm
it's
sorry
sort
to
of,
be laboring the point. Sorry to be laboring the point, but every individual wants to live forever. But that doesn't mean that every individual living forever is good for society.
First of all, no, not every individual wants to live forever. A lot of people don't. So where is he getting this statistic from? A lot of people are suicidal. They don't care about living forever. I've interviewed a lot of people about this, and a lot of people don't want to live forever because they think they get bored, or they think, they wouldn't want to live forever if one member of their family died because they're that weak and pathetic. And there's all kinds of reasons that people give for not wanting to live forever.
And of
That's
course,
true.
this is another reason why we can't have a state and things like, because each individual wants to win a
Right.
government contract. But if everyone wins a government contract, nobody's paying taxes and everything collapses.
Right, right.
I mean, this
Gotcha.
goes back to Kant's categorical imperative, right? Which is to act. The way we should judge our moral actions is to act in such a way that our individual decisions become a universal rule that everybody has to follow. And if we can sustain that, then great. But if we can't sustain that, then it's not a good moral action. I mean, I don't think it's a perfect moral rule, but it's a very interesting thought exercise.
You want to know a perfect moral rule? How about this? How about do what is going to increase your own chances of living forever? There's a moral rule. If everyone did that, then the world would be such a safer, better place. No one would be evil because, being evil is too dangerous. Being evil decreases your chances of living forever because when you do bad things, more likely bad things are going to happen to you. You're more likely going to create enemies for yourself. You're more likely going to be punished by the government. See, this is why selfishness is actually what the world needs. The world needs people to be truly selfish. And when you're truly selfish, then you're truly good and moral at all times. Because being immoral is dangerous for your own self-preservation. You see, anyone who's concerned with their own survival would never be immoral, would never hurt anyone else, because that is way too dangerous. So it's not the selfish thing to do. The selfish thing to do is the moral thing, the ethical thing. You see what I'm saying here? That's the good moral law that everyone should be following.
So the good of society
Yeah.
and the good of the individual is not the same thing at all.
I just really hate how he's trying to separate the good of society versus the good of the individual. He does that so he can try to, justify and make excuses for death. Because, oh, death is going to be good for the society. Ugh.
But I'd still contest that. When talking about existence rather than a government contract, I think the dynamics of that argument change a little bit, because I don't think that you can put our inevitable death on the same intellectual pedestal as someone's desire to get a government contract.
This caller is absolutely right. Stefan Molyneux is his little analogy of, it's not working. It doesn't equate. I mean, we're talking about human existence. We're talking about the most important, most valuable, most precious thing there is, which is an individual life. Each individual life is the most important thing. And from your perspective, and your individual life should be the most important thing. From my perspective, my individual life should be the most important thing. Everyone should have this perspective, putting their own existence first. There you go. That's what's good for society.
I mean, I do think obviously people are going to continue to work to live as long as possible. And
right. I think that a free society will work toward that. But I'm just, confused as to whether or not I would advocate for a free society or, a society where there is a state that you told me definitively that this society would produce, longevity quicker than the free society. I don't know.
Oh, yeah, but come on. You're talking about such absurd theoreticals that it's never going to happen. Nobody can conceivably tell you which kind of society is going to develop longevity the quickest.
Oh, no, right. Yeah, it's purely hypothetical, but I don't know.
But why is it important? Sorry. If something's purely hypothetical, my question is always, why is it important?
The caller, he made a great point. He just said that if you could, say that the big government society would create the life extension faster than the free society, he would go with that. Or he's at least questioning whether he would go with that. That's a fine question to ask, and Stefan Molyneux is just cutting him down rudely, acting like, hey, why are you even thinking about this hypothetical? That was so condescending and rude. Like the guy had a valid hypothetical question. Why is it important? Well, how about this? Because it's important to ask hypotheticals because that's what a good philosopher does. They question about what's possible. And when you start to ask and question what's possible, what would happen in this scenario? What would happen in that scenario? Asking hypothetical questions is absolutely critical for any good philosopher. To just act like, oh, well, if it's hypothetical, why does it matter? It's just really stupid. And I agree, though, that, nobody could know which society, whether the stateless society, the anarchist society, or the big government society, which of those is going to create the life extension faster. We can't really know. But, have your opinion, I'll have mine. I'm going to go with the big government as going to be creating the life extension the fastest, because I don't trust the people to donate. They're not smart enough.
Well, I guess it's important.
Do you mind if I go fishing?
I don't know. Well, I don't know. Well, a lot of what we do is kind of almost purely hypothetical. I mean, you could say that it's not a hypothetical question. That someday we might be faced with that. There might be some objective evidence that says that, well, this society will definitively produce a longer life in the shortest amount of time for everybody, and I guess it's not very likely that we'll be able to quantify that someday, but I don't think it's true. I mean, a lot of what we do, in talking about, anarcho-capital, a lot of it is hypothetical. I wouldn't.
No,
really
sorry. When I say hypothetical,
it's not worthwhile.
Sorry, when I meant hypothetical in your case, I mean impossible. Right? I mean, hypothetical is who's going to build the roads in a free society, but
yeah.
which free society is going to develop a piece of technology, or which kind of society is going to develop longevity first. I mean, I think we can go with some evidence and say that the government... Well, the government-run society isn't, because the government's ridiculously inefficient, right?
Okay, so Stefan Molyneux basically just said, oh, actually, it's not even hypothetically possible that a big government society would create that life extension faster. No, he said that's impossible. It would be, if there was going to be a society that created the life extension the fastest, it would have to be a stateless, free society, whatever. That just shows that Stefan Molyneux has such a closed mind, he can't imagine that a possible scenario where actually having the bigger government would actually would increase our chances of having the life extension sooner. That is obviously a possibility if you're a critical thinker.
I agree with that, yes.
And remember, of course, a lot of people choose to kill themselves for pleasure. I mean, that's a very, very common phenomenon. So people aren't that interested in longevity overall. I mean, just look at the rise of obesity, right? You know, they want the next slice of pizza. They don't want another 10 years of life, right?
Yeah, that's
they
true.
want to keep smoking. They want to keep smoking rather than get another 15 years of life, right?
True.
Oh my gosh. He's completely flip-flop. He said before, do you remember what he said before? He actually said, everybody would want to live forever, you know. Now he's saying people aren't actually that interested in longevity overall. Just completely 180, whatever, just completely flip-flop his position. And why is this even relevant? What kind of point is he trying to make? People are suicidal. They don't care about living forever. Therefore, what? Therefore, it's not a good idea? Therefore, we shouldn't try to cure aging and give us indefinite life extension? What the heck kind of point is he trying to make? Why is he bringing up the fact that most people don't care about living longer? So the heck what? What does that have to do with anything?
Well, yeah, there's that many people, not a lot of people really, are atheists or think in that way. They think they're going to go float in the sky when they die.
Once again, the caller is completely right and brought up a relevant point. The reason these people don't want to live longer or live forever here on this earth is because they believe in some afterlife. They think their brain's going to float up to heaven. There's a correlation between religiosity and the acceptance of death, I bet. I'm not sure for sure, but I bet, and for my own interviews of people, I definitely have noticed that religious people are way less inclined to want to live forever physically because of their belief in the afterlife. A secular person, an atheist, is more likely to want this indefinite life extension. And they're way more likely to be afraid of death, which is a good thing. But anyways, let's get back to it.
True. Yeah, so not many people hold life itself in high regard to begin with.
Can I ask you something, though? Let me ask you a couple of questions, if you don't mind, and you certainly don't have to answer anything, but I'm always curious about, there's 12 million impossible, theoretical, hypothetical situations that people could come up with, and I'm always curious as to what draws, because you said this was going round and round in your mind, which indicates that it's a bit more than merely abstract. So what has your historical experience been with death?
I'll tell you why this is going around and around in this guy's head. Because it is the most important question and the most important thing to even think about, to ponder about as a human being on this planet, to think about death and what death means to you, and that the idea of non-existence should suck. Should severely suck. If you're a smart person, you would realize that death and non-existence is horrible. It's a nightmare. And so the fact that this guy is thinking about it and dwelling on death and imagining what it would be like to live forever, and that if that's a possibility, that just shows this guy is more intelligent than Stefan, who probably even hasn't thought about this very much. Doesn't sound like he has. Actually, it sounds like Stefan Molyneux has already come to the conclusion that death is somehow a good thing. And he probably thinks it's inevitable.
Yeah.
And so, no, society would be catastrophic. If the morals of society change, it is catastrophic for the vast majority of individuals within that society. And that's why society is so hard to change. And that's why I'm saying if people live forever, I think that would only get worse and worse over time.
Right, yeah, because people will just perpetuate their own biases, through, for eternity. And it won't do any help to the society as a whole, that's for sure. But yeah,
what's your
anyway,
personal experience of death been, just out of curiosity? Have you had close people close to you die at any time?
Well, not no one in my immediate family has died. My parents are still alive. Only grandparents I've lost. So, but I consider it rather frequently. The fact that I think that it's healthy to always live with that perspective that someday I'm not going to be here, and I should keep that in mind whenever I'm making decisions in everyday life.
Oh, this poor caller. What? How does he know that he's not going to be here one day? He's given up? Like, that's what it sounds like to me. He's already saying that he's going to lose. Like, he's not optimistic enough and admitting that he could actually possibly live forever. Sounds like he thinks death is inevitable. Very sad here. Very sad situation. This is the situation that most people are in. They just cannot muster up enough optimism and hope that it could actually be possible to live forever. You gotta have that hope. Otherwise, what's gonna drive you to succeed? What's gonna make you work extremely hard for your eternal life if you don't at least have some hope?
For many years now, as I've mentioned before on the show, whenever an ambulance goes screaming past me, I can't help but think, hey, one day that's going to be my ride, and I ain't coming back. Right? One day I will be inside that screaming ambulance, and the spots will be spreading across my vision, and with any luck, the relatives will not be beckoning from the light, and I will be going on the LSD exit acid trip to nowhere. I will be opening my eyes to the eternal night of nothingness.
Stefan Molyneux is, well, he's totally a deathist, obviously. He's totally a fatalist. He doesn't have any hope for eternal life. He's such a pessimist, fatalist, acting like it's not even possible. How does he know? How does he know he's going to be in that ambulance dying? How does he know the technology's not going to completely change everything? It doesn't sound like you're trying to live forever. And if you end up in oblivion, if you end up dying and ceasing to exist forever, then you lose. And your whole life was meaningless. You probably think you're going to have meaning through your kids. You probably think you're going to have meaning because you created this, podcast, whatever. And it's not going to mean anything to you if you're dead.
And that's something that I think of. I think of that at least once a day, and I think it's an important thing to think of. So I think you're wise to do that. You don't want the storm clouds of death to take all the sunshine out of your life, of course, and it doesn't sound like you're in the danger of doing that. But yeah, I think that's a wise thing to do because we are raindrops going down the window.
Well, I'll tell you what. The storm clouds of death will take all the fun out of your life, all the light out of your life, if we don't cure aging. And your apathetic, fatalistic attitude isn't helping anything, Stefan.
It's a funny thing that you mentioned this topic just as you're heading off. I just found out, almost by accident, that a guy I was in business with for many years died last year. I haven't spoken to him, of course, in forever, but he died. He was quite young, and he's dead.
I bet you Stefan Molyneux's friend didn't try very hard to live forever. I bet his eternal life strategy sucked. but he didn't even have an eternal life strategy because he's probably pessimistic fatalist like Stefan Molyneux. And if your friend has indeed died and ceased to exist, he's a loser too.
So you get nothing. You lose.
And so, yeah, it just struck me, it happens. We kind of live in a random skyfall of occasional arrows. We're all just walking across the field, and these arrows just keep raining down from the sky, and they go through people, sometimes half, sometimes all the way. Sometimes it renders them mute or blind or deaf or dead. There's this continual drip, drip, drip of mortality arrows raining down from the sky as we march across this landscape, and it is just something to remember that you never know.
Hence the complete and utter nightmare that is life. The fact that we could freaking die. The fact that we're mortal. The fact that our eternal life is not guaranteed to us. This is the most horrible thing about life. The fact that we're mortal, the fact that we could die, and we don't have a guarantee of our eternal life. This is the true nightmare of life. This is the horrible situation that we must correct. Using science and technology, to actually give ourselves a meaningful life that can go on forever, that can last forever. Because a temporary life, what's the point of that? What's the point of being born and then you die? You get old and die. So what? What's the point of that?
I wrote a poem many, many years ago, but I think I was 19 or 20, which I still remember it word for word. It's pretty short. It said, "I'm not afraid of death. Where I am, death is not. Where death is, I am not. We shall never meet."
Right.
And that's true.
Exactly.
You can't experience death. You can't meet death. I am no more afraid of life after death than I am afraid of the 17th century when I wasn't born yet. I just simply won't be experiencing any of it. I will not be. I will not be.
It makes me want to vomit. That thought that he just expressed there in his little poem. Death still sucks. Just because you cannot experience, just because you won't know you're dead. And it'll be, if you're dead, it'll be like before you were born. And, like somehow that negates the fact that death is a huge problem. That death would make it so that we can never experience the beauty of life. That's the tragedy of death. Okay? I don't care. I mean, just the fact that you will have the absence of something that is good. That, therefore, is the problem. Yes, you're not going to be suffering if you're dead. You're going to be non-existent. But that non-existence is the very problem. But they're acting like the non-existence is some kind of a solution. Because there's nothing to worry about. You won't exist. You won't be able to experience suffering. You'll just be like nothing. You won't even know you're dead. Like that's some kind of comfort. That's not a comfort. The tragedy of death is that you will be lacking, you will be missing out on the beauty of life for the rest of eternity. You will have nothing. That's the problem. Okay? I freaking hate this little sentiment here. This is from Mark Twain. Mark Twain said something like this, and everyone just kept on regurgitating it. Ugh. And I think Epicurus was the other guy who promoted this idea. All kinds of stupid ancient philosophers promoted this idea. People keep on regurgitating the philosophy of these stupid philosophers. They can't think for themselves.
And not being is, Socrates made an argument. He said, well, think of the very best night of sleep you ever had. Well, that's if death is the end of everything, then you're basically going in for the best and most eternal night of sleep. Because the best night's sleep that you ever had is the one where you don't remember anything. You close your eyes at 11, you wake up at 7, you're like, oh man, I didn't have to pee, I didn't have any dreams, and that's the best night of sleep.
I hate when people compare death to sleep. Like that's some kind of fair comparison. Sleep, you wake up from. You hope to wake up. You expect to wake up. Then you get to live again. It's very different than a permanent, eternal sleep.
Soon will I rest. Yes. Forever sleep.
And an eternal sleep is the worst thing that could ever happen to you. You won't even be dreaming in that eternal sleep of death. You'll be nothing. There will be no thought process, non-existence, and everything is obsolete. Once you enter into the permanent sleep of death, everything becomes meaningless, and your entire life that you had previously lived was meaningless. Get that through your head.
So he said that's now, of course, if there's an afterlife, then we get to chat with all of these great people from history and all of that. We get to jam with Hendrix and Mercury and all these great things. So it's either going to be a party or it's going to be the best night's sleep forever, in which either way, it's not that big a deal.
It's not that big a deal. See the delusions that people come up with as a way to cope with death? Because they cannot face the reality that death sucks, that death is horrible, that death makes life meaningless. Oh no, they cannot face that. So they have to tell themselves all kinds of comforting lies and delusions. No big deal either way. It'll just be like you're sleeping, or it'll be a party in the afterlife. I cannot handle this stupidity. This is unacceptable. This is unbearable stupidity here that we're witnessing. It's just a classic coping mechanism. People take a problem, let's say the biggest problem ever, death. Let's just turn it into a non-problem. Let's just say it's no big deal. Then we don't have a problem. We don't have to worry about it anymore. We don't have to fear. We don't have to stress. We can just sit back and go through life blissfully ignorant. Ignorance is bliss. And Stefan Molyneux is ignorant, and now he's trying to make this caller ignorant. To put some coping mechanisms so this guy can handle death. See, even the very video, in the description box of this video, dealing with death, or how to deal with death. See, they just want to deal. Death is not a problem that you can actually deal with. The only way to deal with death is to not die. That's the only proper way to deal with death. You don't deal with it by inventing some delusion and coping mechanisms and telling yourself that death is no big deal. That's a loserish thing to do.
Either way, it's not that big a deal. And but of course, that's a life well lived when you're 70.
A life well lived? Who cares if you lived a good life? If you end up dead in the ground as a rotting corpse, if you lose your consciousness, if you lose every memory of everything you ever accomplished and of every relationship you ever had, who cares if you lived a good life? Who cares about anything you did in life if you die and cease to exist?
Anyway, so I think
the way to look at it.
Yeah, and my the last thing I'll sort of mention is that Galileo said that the only reason that we are fundamentally hostile to death is because we don't recognize that we're only alive because of death. Like you and I are only alive because people die. And because the species needs to be renewed, and that's why we're alive. So we all want to be the exception to the rule, right? Everybody wants to win the lottery. Everybody wants stuff without earning it or trading it or begging for it, in my case. Everyone wants to be the exception. We're only alive because of death, and yet we don't want death to be part of our lives. Well, that's not the deal.
We can make a new deal, okay? We don't have to accept the deal we've been handed by evolution and nature and tradition and history. We can take control of the future. We can give ourselves an eternal life. This is the only inspirational dream that we need to fight for. This is everything. Everything is riding on this possibility of living forever.
That's not the way it works. I'm only here because countless people, I think it's 30 to 1, dead to alive. Countless people have died before me in human history, and that's the only reason I'm here. So for me to beg for an exception when death is the only reason I'm here is a bit fatuous.
Dude, I don't care that people had to die for me to get here. I don't care about the history of how I got here. I'm concerned about that I'm here right now, and I don't want to lose my life, my only existence that I have, okay? And he's asking me to just be content with that because every other person in history had to die. And so, you should be fine with that too. You shouldn't ask to be the exception. Just accept your fate. Just die and rot in the ground for the rest of eternity. It's no big deal. Bull crap. Judging him for being so stupid.
It definitely is something that is the deal. We're walking because we turn, we are corporeal because we will turn to dust, and because others have turned to dust before us. And the coalescing of dust to person only happens because we have to go back to dust at the end.
Stefan Molyneux, and all these other deathists just promoting their whole assumption is that death is inevitable. That's what it always boils down to. Always this fatalistic attitude. And it's quite pathetic. Because if you wanted to live forever badly enough, you should at least admit that it's possible. And then from there, you take that possibility and you run with it. You run all the way and you never give up. You never let go of that dream because it's too important. So there's really no excuse for this horrible fatalism. There was people way in history, in every time period, who were trying to live forever. There's really no excuse, especially in 2016, to have this kind of fatalistic attitude. Just look around you. Look at how much fast science and medicine and technology is advancing. How can you just ignore that? How can you just have a blind eye to that and just act like, oh, we gotta die, this is the way it's always been, and just accept it? No big deal. I cannot. This guy is ridiculous.
Right, exactly. That kind of reminds me of the, I'm not sure if you ever heard the quote by Richard Dawkins, but it's a good one. He says, like, how dare we scoff at that return to the inevitable state from which the vast majority have never stirred.
I gotta make a whole nother video judging Richard Dawkins for this stupid quote.
We are going to die, and that makes us the lucky ones.
So we are the lucky ones, because most people had never gotten to be born. And we're born, so we're lucky. We get to die. That makes us lucky, because most people had never been born. So they'll never even get to experience life. It's just crap. It's a whole crap speech, and I will judge it. Richard Dawkins. Ugh.
Meaning that, you think of the set of potential life that could have even been here in our place. The possible combinations of egg and sperm, it's so, you can't even imagine the number of possible humans. And, against those odds, it was us that are here. So that's another, something along those lines to consider.
I'll tell you what, if I don't get to live forever, I have zero gratitude that I got to live. Zero. If my life is temporary, if it's finite, then it might as well have never existed. I have no thankfulness, no gratitude for that life. I am only grateful if I get to live forever. Then that's something that's actually worth something. That actually counts for something. If you eventually die, if you're just a blip, and then you're just a little line between 2 points of nothingness. Oh, yeah, nothingness over here, and whoop, lip, 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 and then just nothingness. 2 points of nothingness. You're just a little line. Then there's pointless. That's not something to be thankful for. That's something to be spiteful. Just because you got a little bit of existence. So what? I want an eternity of existence so I can have fun forever. And if I don't get that, then I'm a loser and life was meaningless. Just admit that to yourself. Admit the truth. Even though it's hard, it's painful to admit that. Do it. Do it. Because that's the way to go through life. That is to be truthful and authentic with yourself. And don't lie to yourself. Don't delude yourself like these people.
It's interesting.
Oh, yeah, no, we stand on bodies, for sure. And that's the only reason we've got any height at all. And people will stand on us. That's the deal.
Well, you know what, Stefan Molyneux, with that attitude, yeah, people will be standing on you. I'll be standing on your burnt ashes, or your rotting corpse in the ground, because you're probably going to die because you don't care enough about this. You don't care about living forever. It's not important to you. You've accepted the inevitability of your death. And so that's what you're probably going to get, because you didn't value your life enough to try for it. Trying is half the battle. You got to at least try to live forever, or you're not likely going to live forever. It's a very hard goal to begin with. So if you don't at least try for it, even the people who try for it, most of them are probably going to fail. And so if you don't at least try for it, your chances are not good. So I feel sorry for you, Stefan Molyneux. This is just another example of some person who people have lifted up, like this some great philosopher. Yeah, this guy's really popular on YouTube. People think he's so smart. Well, obviously not. He's an idiot. I have just proven that. All right, I guess that concludes this video. Thank you for watching. Leave me some comments. Who do you want me to judge next? It's hard for me to find all the death is blasphemy out there. So thank you for the people who showed me this video. Help me find some other blasphemy to judge. I like judging these people, and I think this needs to be done. Okay, these people, I cannot just let them get away with their crap. They need to be challenged on their deathism. I hate it. Thank you, and yeah, tell me who to judge next. Goodbye, Eternal Life fans, and I hope you live forever. Try for it. Never give up. Think every day about what's your eternal life strategy. Think hard about it. Keep on developing your strategy to live forever. Thank you.